This important day in Moscow, CNN correspondent Claire Shipman is there. Hello, Claire.
What you're seeing now are crowds outside of the front of the White House, and what we saw just a few minutes ago was a large crowd of people emerging from the White House. We saw a few white flags flying. We have not been told that this is a surrender. In fact, we have heard rumors that they may be bringing out wounded. But we did see two white flags flying and a large crowd of people emerging from the White House and some ambulances in the area, and there has been no gunfire to speak of for the last, well, there it is again, but it had been quiet for the last 5 or 10 minutes, so they may be evacuating the wounded right now.
Claire, when you say large crowd, I realize this is awfully imprecise. Can you take a guess at the size of that crowd that came out?
Well, the crowd, as massed as you see it now, seems to be at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 people. The crowd that emerged from the White House was probably somewhat smaller. There was a crowd outside that seemed to go up the steps to meet them, and they've merged together. We couldn't really give you an accurate estimate of the crowd that came out.
All right. Developments continue to evolve in Moscow. There are now then at least clearly somewhat fewer people inside the Russian White House now than there were half an hour ago and have been all night. Apparently some of the wounded being brought out, perhaps some others. CNN's Daybreak continues after this.
Finally, there's a TV that proves technology can make our lives easier. A Magnavox TV with a precise color picture, smart windows which preview other channels, and the unique smart sound feature which ensures your volume will stay at normal levels no matter what comes on. Magnavox is so smart, I didn't even have to show up for this commercial. How'd I do?
Great, you were great. The innovative TVs from Magnavox. Smart, very smart.
Falling dominoes show the power of momentum. One smart move can bring your company all the benefits of momentum. 70 companies have invested nearly $1 billion and created more than 8,500 jobs in Ohio because of the momentum started by the Ohio Jobs Creation Act. I'm Governor George Voinovich. If you want a plan to build momentum for your business, let me send you Bottom Line Ohio. To get your copy, call 1-800-345-OHIO.
At York, we carefully build and test our high-efficiency gas furnaces to make them so trouble-free. See, we know that cowboys, architects, and our future athletes need a carefree environment. So even if you're off to ski the slopes of Lillehammer, you can be comfortable with where you're headed. And no one knows more about making your world comfortable than your local York heating and air conditioning dealer. Find them in the Yellow Pages, your high-efficiency home comfort expert, York, making your world a more comfortable place.
The mayor of Washington, D.C. called out the National Guard after a child was murdered in her city. I'm Mary Tillotson. Has urban America become a war zone? The Army's in our neighborhoods on CNN and Company, 11:30 Eastern today.
Recapping other top stories that we are covering in Somalia, unconfirmed reports that at least one U.S. soldier is being held hostage after heavy fighting in the capital, Mogadishu, that left 5 GIs dead, one reportedly paraded through the streets on a wheelbarrow. President Clinton's in California to push for his health care reform plan. Today he's to speak to the AFL-CIO in San Francisco. In New York, opening arguments begin today in the trial of 4 men accused of plotting to bomb the World Trade Center. A Los Angeles jury still deliberating in the trial of 2 men charged with beating trucker Reginald Denny. The Supreme Court is back from its summer recess today. The High Court's expected to take up a voting rights case that asks whether a Georgia county must change its form of government to give blacks a greater voice. House Minority Leader Bob Michel reportedly will not seek a 20th term. That comes from a report today in the Peoria Journal-Star that says Michel will announce his retirement plans today. A government report says thousands more Americans were pushed into poverty last year. The report blames lingering unemployment and the slow recovery from the recession. 26 and a half minutes past the hour. Now, Mark McKay is in from the sports desk with a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Great sports day yesterday.
Certainly was. Bob, you can take away all the allegiances. The final day of baseball's regular season, nothing short of the fans' delight. For only the second time since divisional play began in 1969, two teams were tied for first place with one game to go. Atlanta and San Francisco set out on their opponent duties Sunday with the National League West title hanging in the balance. The Braves were the first to take the field, looking to keep their record clean against expansion Colorado. Ron Gant, with a 2-0 lead behind him in the fourth, goes to center field. Chris Jones cannot come up with a baseball. Otis Nixon scores, as does Jeff Blauser. It's a 4-0 lead as Gant pulls into third base. We go to the ninth. 5-3 Braves. Greg McMichael on to try and save it for Tom Glavine. And look at the defense in the field. Terry Pendleton, 2 outs. Now the final out as McMichael strikes out Darrell Boston to pick up his 19th save. So the Braves beat the Rockies and settle in to see what would unfold in Los Angeles. The Giants reinforced their game faces for this duel, but it didn't matter. Dave Burba in the 5th inning, and he is rocked by Mike Piazza. His 35th home run, first of 2 on the day. Corey Steiner then steps up and hits a 2-run shot. 6-1 at that point, 12-1. The Dodgers beat the Giants, so back in Atlanta, the party was just beginning. As the Braves players and about 8,000 fans stuck around to toast the team's 3rd straight West Division title with an impromptu celebration at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. As the champagne flowed, the champs reflected on their 104-win season and their down-to-the-wire duel with Barry Bonds and the San Francisco Giants.
People that counted us out, you know, even after we've proven the last 2 years that we had a pretty good ball club and we were a better ball club this year, we felt, people counted us out. We'll look back at that.
The only good thing about it, I didn't have to see Atlanta on the same field. It's about the best thing about it. I didn't have to watch them parade around the field.
Atlanta will be afforded 2 days rest before the work towards securing a 3rd straight National League pennant begins. Game 1 of the NLCS Wednesday in Philadelphia. Quarterbacks hit hard in NFL Week 5. Among the injuries, Philadelphia's Randall Cunningham gone for up to 8 weeks after suffering a broken leg in the Eagles' win against New York. Joe Montana's status up in the air after the Kansas City QB injured a hamstring in the Chiefs' victory against the Raiders. That's sports for now. Bob.
Thank you, Mark. And we will be back with more news at the top of the hour. In the meantime, a live update on events in Moscow coming up after the break, followed by CNN's Business Day. Stay with us.
Face it, tap water just tastes and smells awful. And buying bottled water costs a fortune, and it doesn't always taste that good.
That's right, Dick. In a blind taste test, Sterling Spring won hands down.
Introducing the Sterling Spring 4-stage water filter. Now get over a year's supply of clean, fresh, great-tasting water for just 3 cents a gallon. And it'll fit your tap in 5 minutes, guaranteed.
From our cooking to our coffee, Sterling Spring makes everything taste great.
Sterling Spring fits on top of or under the counter and was awarded the Water Quality Association Gold Seal. And its replaceable cartridge is validated to remove lead. Now it's yours for 3 low payments of $33.30. Order now and receive this gift certificate for an additional replacement cartridge, a $30 value, free.
Remember, good water is important to your health, and it shouldn't cost a fortune. Here's how to order.
To order your Sterling Spring for 3 low payments of $33.30 and receive your bonus replacement cartridge certificate, have your checkbook or credit card ready and call 1-800-257-1257 now. Or mail payments plus S&H to the address shown. Call now. COD's accepted.
This is CNN.
I'm Claire Shipman in Moscow. If you're just tuning in, we are continuing to cover the standoff that is now into its 7th hour between Boris Yeltsin's troops and the parliament defenders at the Russian White House. Just after dawn this morning, dozens of armored personnel carriers and tanks moved into the city to surround the White House. All morning long, there's been fire from the White House, return fire from the tanks and soldiers outside. The top of the Parliament building has been completely scorched, along with a nearby building. What we have seen just recently is that some people may have, in fact, come out of the building now. It appears that some wounded may have come out. Crowds are gathering in the streets. You can see the soldiers there trying to keep the people back. We will continue to keep you updated. Still no word of anybody offering to surrender at this point. And now we go to business day in New York.
We have the dollar mostly higher, as are gold, silver and oil, and indeed the world stock markets also mostly higher. We'll start our coverage with the US dollar. It is up only slightly against the European currencies with that fighting in Russia. It is not enjoying much of a safe haven role at this point. The dollar is up just a half penny on the mark, about a quarter cent higher on the British pound. It's actually down slightly on the Japanese yen. As for Treasury bonds, they're holding fairly steady. A slight loss for the 30-year bond. It's off 6/30 seconds. The yield is 6% even. And later on today, we should tell you the bond market will get figures on construction spending for August. A small rise expected there.
Another traditional safe haven, precious metals prices, only slightly higher this morning as traders eye the situation in Russia. We have gold up 60 cents at $355.60 an ounce. Silver gaining a nickel, it's at $4.09 an ounce. And oil prices, which jumped early on, now up just a bit. Fears of production cuts in Russia fading as traders feel the situation is becoming more stable. Russia is one of the biggest oil producers in the world. Right now, Brent North Sea crude is up just 4 cents, though, at $17.34 a barrel.
Now, the people who trade U.S. stocks in London predict a steady opening for the blue chips today. They say that despite the violence in Moscow, it looks like President Boris Yeltsin has the upper hand, and that is emerging as a plus for the stock market. Here's a stock that's already moving in London. It's Microsoft, down a quarter at 81 3/4. The software company says it'll cut the price of an enhanced version of its Windows software. Here's two stocks to watch when Wall Street finally opens up. US West and 3DO. The Baby Bells expected to announce a deal today with a company called 3DO, Video Technology. It's all about interactive television. Stocks in Europe slightly higher this morning as fears about any negative fallout from the situation in Russia subside. At the moment in London, the FT 100 share index is up nearly 9 points at 3,048. In Frankfurt, the DAX index is up 10.5, reaching 1922. In Tokyo, though, the Nikkei average closed with a loss of just 18 points, nothing significant, at 20,264.
Joining us now from our London Bureau Live is Jane Peterson. She has more on the reaction in Europe to developments in Moscow. Jane?
Deborah, the foreign exchange markets have been relatively calm throughout Europe this morning, with traders assuming that Yeltsin will remain in the driver's seat. As long as that assumption holds up, they say the dollar may trade slightly lower through the rest of the day.
Unlike the frenzy that often happens among currency traders when a crisis breaks, trading rooms like this one at Chemical Bank in London looked rather normal this morning. While the dollar is trading lower than it was over the weekend, traders don't expect much more of a slide, predicting a drop of perhaps another pfennig by the day's close.
There doesn't seem to have been a great deal of shock value in what's happened in Russia. These developments have been building up for a few weeks, and as such, the markets have had some time to discount these sorts of events. So the reaction has not been as substantial as other times in the past, such as the coup attempt, for example, where there was a much greater shock value.
Still, currency traders say in the unlikely event of a Yeltsin fall from power, the dollar would move quite substantially. In the short term to around 170 against the mark and probably higher in the long term. On the equity side, the situation looks much the same. After an initial fall of about 1%, stocks quickly bounced back. Still, like their currency counterparts, equity analysts warn if Yeltsin's strength wanes, the markets will go wild.
The markets really have a bet that Yeltsin's going to win. If that proves to be wrong, then the correction could actually be reasonably severe, of the order of 2 to 5 percentage points in terms of market values. But that we have yet to see.
Of course, some analysts are surprised the markets have not reacted more, pointing out that even in the German market, which is traditionally the most sensitive to Russian upheavals, stocks have remained buoyant.
So for now, the Europeans are taking the view that Yeltsin will remain in power. Unless that changes, you can expect both currency and equity markets to remain fairly calm as traders watch the crisis come to what they hope will be a quick conclusion. Deborah Stewart?
Thank you, Jane. Jane Peterson reporting live from London. And Business Day will be back in just a moment
with continued coverage of events in Moscow and world markets.
place on Earth, home of the ancient gods. The gods could have chosen any place on Earth. They chose Greece, a warm land, where the spirit of the gods lives on.
The right start. The right perks. The right room. The right preparation. The right result. The right reward. The right way, the Wyndham way. Wyndham Hotels and Resorts.
I'm Claire Shipman in Moscow with our continuing coverage of the Russian crisis. What you are seeing now are crowds gathered on Kutuzovsky Prospect. A few minutes ago, the defense minister, Pavel Grachov, pulled up and got out of his ZIL limousine. He had been in the area for quite a while. This may be the first time he's gotten out. It appears he's trying to find out what is happening with the operation, to talk to some of the troops there in the tanks and APCs that you see. Again, a few minutes ago, we saw from our cameras crowds of people leaving the White House. It appears that they may have been evacuating some of the wounded people. We also had a call from a deputy from inside of the White House on a cellular phone who said they are ready to negotiate, but we have heard nothing more about anybody wanting to surrender or asking for official negotiations. Now we go back to business day in New York.
Claire Shipman in Moscow. Now joining us to discuss the impact of the Russian situation on the financial markets is Neil McKinnon. He is the chief economist at Citibank Europe, and he joins us from our London studios. Neil, welcome to Business Day. Would I be right in saying that as long as Boris Yeltsin looks like he's going to win, U.S. investors don't have much to worry about in terms of a sell-off on Wall Street?
Well, President Yeltsin stands for economic and political reform, and I think if that continues, the markets will clearly welcome that. If President Yeltsin loses power and gives way to the so-called hardliners, then there'll certainly be a very big setback for economic reform, and financial markets clearly won't welcome that.
But we do apparently have some people emerging from the Russian parliament building as we speak. In fact, there is some talk of negotiations at this point. All of that presumably is a big plus for the markets, correct?
Well, I think the financial markets are taking the view that President Yeltsin does have things under control, and that some semblance of order is likely to return to the streets of Moscow. And I think in that regard, it's no surprise that certainly during trading time in Europe this morning, that the financial markets have taken a very relaxed view of what's going on at Moscow at the present time.
Neil, CNN's Claire Shipman just reported that CNN had received a cellular phone call from a deputy inside the White House saying that the group in there was ready to negotiate. Would you expect that to spark a rally?
Well, I think the financial markets will certainly welcome that, but I think it's very early at this stage to take too seriously what's going on at the present time. I think the financial markets feel that President Yeltsin has got things under control. I think they'll welcome that, and I think that the markets will look back at economic fundamentals and take their cue from that.
This is, though, the second such crisis for the Russian political system. Are you at all surprised to see the markets calming so quickly?
Well, I think the build-up in tensions that we've seen over the past couple of months as President Yeltsin has tried to push through economic and political reforms has certainly been a focus of interest for Western financial markets and for international investors generally. I think the hope is that President Yeltsin persists and can get through his economic reform package. The alternative is not very pleasant. I think many people feel that if Russia was to turn its back on what was happening, then the opportunities for an improvement in economic welfare generally would be very small.
Neil, we've got this fighting in Moscow. We also have U.S. troops killed in Somalia and a report of an American pilot taken prisoner in Somalia, and yet the price of gold is doing absolutely nothing. Why haven't precious metals reacted more to what's going on around the world?
Well, what we've seen over the past couple of months has been an actual move up in the gold price, perhaps for different reasons. I think that the talk that there would be some cutback in the supply of gold, that would be an increase in the demand for gold, particularly from China, did push up the price of gold up to $400. There's since been some correction in that. I think that for people to start buying precious metals, gold price, again, they'd have to get worried about the supply-demand balance in those markets, perhaps get worried that inflation was going to be more of a problem. At the present time, that doesn't look as though it's going to be the case.
But would it be generally true to say that events overseas these days carry less weight with the financial markets than do domestic politics and domestic economics?
Well, I think it's certainly true to say that the so-called safe haven attributes that, say, the US dollar, the price of gold, for example, that have had in the past, I think those safe haven attributes have diminished. There's no doubt about that. Foreign exchange markets, unfortunately, are becoming used to these sorts of events, the Gorbachev coup, the Gulf War, the present situation in Moscow, and I think that they feel that significant and very sharp movements in the price of currencies, bonds, gold, whatever, are not really necessary. So they take a much more relaxed view of international events these days.
Another question just on the currency markets, Neil. We see the dollar up only slightly against the mark and the pound. It's actually down against the yen. Does that reflect the apparent stability that seems to be taking hold in Russia now? Or is it the international community's commentary on the safety of the US dollar as a safe haven?
Well, we saw the US dollar move up to about 165.5 against the German Deutschmark in Tokyo trading time. In London trading time, we saw some slippage to around the 163.5 level. That's the sort of level that we were at close of play on Friday. So for the time being, the financial markets, like most other people, will be watching events in Moscow, see how they unfold, and then take decisions on the next direction in the currency.
All right, thank you, Neil. Neil McKinnon of Citibank Europe. And Business Day will be right back with continued live coverage of the crisis in Russia.
To stop a friend from drinking and driving, don't play fair. Play to win.
Got your car keys?
Yeah, they're right, they're just here a second ago.
They'll turn up. I'll call your cab.
They're right
Let's
here.
go.
Take the keys, call a cab, take a stand. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Who says they don't make them like they used to? Sanitary, chrome steel from top to bottom. This is a heavy-duty vacuum for home. Sanitary by Eureka.
For the select dealer nearest you, 1-800-282-2886.
This one will last for years.
When I decided to fix my porch myself,
I couldn't quite believe it.
so who comes to the rescue?
Well, handy he's not. And since when did you get all this energy?
Ever since you got me started on breakfast with grape nuts. It's like you said, this box is full of great mornings.
Look, it's right here. Fat-free, natural energy source. I said try it a few mornings.
And I did. And it does help keep me going. You know, Dad, I think I have inherited your handiness.
Yeah, I think you inherited my toolkit. That's what he's got.
Post Grape Nut cereal helps keep you going strong all morning long.
Please be seated. The performance is about to begin. The 32-valve, 280-horsepower Lincoln Mark 8. It's like Beethoven with an attitude. Drive everything else first.
The National Organization for Women.
In the eternal search for the truth, you're bound to step on a few toes.
Ross Perot.
To those aggrieved parties, we now offer our apology. Crossfire, weeknights on CNN.
I'm Claire Shipman in Moscow. The standoff here continues after a long night. Just after dawn, tanks and APCs, Boris Yeltsen's tanks and APCs, moved into the White House. For hours, there was heavy fighting around the building. There's been something of a lull lately. The fire that was started by some of the tank fire at the White House seems to be spreading inside of the building. You can see it burning right now. A few minutes ago, they were starting to move what appeared to be some wounded people out of the White House. Some of the people were carrying white flags. There were ambulances nearby, so it seemed that they were trying to remove the wounded, that it wasn't any sort of surrender. And there has, in fact, been no official sign yet that Mr. Khasbalatov or Mr. Rutskoy have any intention of surrendering at this point. And now we go back to Business Day in New York.
That's CNN's Claire Shipman reporting live from Moscow. Russia's closest economic ties are with Germany, so it is that nation's economy that would appear to be most affected by long-term political unrest in Russia. Joining us now to discuss that prospect, among other things, is Dr. Gerhard Leiner. He's Chief Financial Officer of Germany's Daimler-Benz. Good to have you with us, Doctor. Are you surprised that the reaction of the German markets has been relatively calm to this much political turmoil in Russia?
Yes, I'm actually surprised because we are so close to Russia geographically that one should assume that there is a more serious impact.
Right now, it would appear that Mr. Yeltsin has regained the upper hand in this battle. However, if that were to change, what would be the impact on Germany?
Well, I'm pretty sure that that will not only on Germany, but on the whole Europe, and especially the new countries, Eastern Europe, have a very detrimental effect.
Presumably, Germany's real concern here is that there is chaos in Russia and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Russians approach the German border as refugees. That is the key concern in Germany, isn't it?
Yes, that's a key concern. There are other concerns, the long-term consequences, but this would be the short-term consequence. The long-term consequence is that if totalitarism would come back, a dictatorship come back as we had it before, that would probably stop or at least affect negatively the development which is so well in Poland, in the Czech Republic, and in Hungary.
You are the chief financial officer of Mercedes-Benz. You control literally billions of dollars of capital and where it's going to go.
Yes.
Would you consider at this point putting your company's capital in Russia?
No.
Under no circumstances, at this point?
At this point.
Do you have any capital at risk in Russia as we speak?
We have some capital there, but not at risk. The risk covering is with the federal government of Germany.
And your primary capital assets are in the Czech Republic and in Poland and in the former Eastern Germany, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the refugee question, if there were to be an influx of refugees from the political uncertainty in Russia, what would the impact be on the labor markets in Germany, where people have already expressed a great deal of anger and concern about refugees?
That's the key issue, because we already have the highest unemployment figure we ever had in our history, or at least history after World War II. We expect an unemployment number of 4.5 million this year. That, of course, would mean that there is no possibility to integrate these refugees immediately or in short term into our work process.
Would you expect then to see politically motivated violence in Germany increase as a result of any
well,
refugees?
I wouldn't exclude that.
Europe at the moment is primarily in recession. There is not many buoyant parts of the economy in Europe. Assuming that Mr. Yeltsin wins this one, presumably the recession in Europe won't get any worse because of what's happened in Russia, will it?
Well, if Boris Yeltsin wins, this is a very positive sign. And everything that happened in Russia, again, I must say, we are so geographically so close to this country, and we have started to have very good economic ties with them. That would be very positive.
Germany would breathe a sigh of relief if Mr. Yeltsin wins?
Absolutely.
One very brief, unrelated question. Daimler-Benz is cutting a great number of jobs in Europe. It is building a plant here in the United States. Is the United States now the low-cost producer for automobiles?
It's one of the low-cost producers. That might be surprising for many people, even for your citizens, but it's a fact. And we found Alabama as being the very appropriate site.
The United States is a safe haven for your capital?
Yes.
Indeed. Dr. Gerhard Lehner, Chief Financial Officer at Daimler-Benz. Thanks indeed for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Business Day will be right back after this break with continued live coverage of events in Russia.
You are here. He has the traveler's checks here. Think about that. Now think about this. American Express checks for two. The only traveler's checks that either of you can use. Don't leave home without them.
If someone tells you they don't want a landfill in their backyard, ask them if they'd like one of these. What business do we have saying we help the environment? That is our business. An insurance company insures many things, but mostly it's there to ensure the quality of people's lives. And last year, backed by a $680 million investment from ITT Hartford helped 5 million people by paying for over $5 billion in personal and business losses, one person at a time. If you're looking for insurance, look to the insurance company of ITT. ITT. We're adding more than just our name.
It's going to be different every week.
The King of Talk is coming to weekends. And joining Larry on his premiere broadcast, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Larry's working the weekend.
Oh, come on, this beats work.
Premieres Saturday on CNN.
Get a head start on your day with the latest news reports, business updates from major financial centers, sports scores from the night before, and weather forecasts for the day ahead. Daybreak gives you what you need to rise and shine. Weekday mornings on CNN.
I'm Claire Shipman in Moscow. It's been a long night and morning here. Boris Yeltsin's forces still trying to oust the parliamentarians from the White House. The army moved in just after dawn, shattering the Parliament building with tank fire and gunfire. Not long ago, we saw what appeared to be people leaving the building carrying white flags. We were under the impression that they were attempting to evacuate wounded from the White House. Reuters is reporting that there were 3 men carrying white flags who left the Parliament building simply to join the demonstrators outside. Now, Reuters is also reporting, and we have not confirmed this, that a Yeltsin military aide has said there are 500 dead inside of the Parliament building. Again, that is unconfirmed from Reuters. At this point, you can see the crowds gathering below the White House, still trying to get as close as they can. And now we go back to business day in New York.
CNN's Claire Shipman reporting live from Moscow. And now a rundown of some news from the United States. President Clinton's health care reform plan may not reduce the federal deficit as much as originally projected. The Wall Street Journal says the estimates will be refined. They could project up to $20 billion less deficit reduction over the next 7 years. The White House originally said the plan would reduce the gap by $91 billion over the period. A final draft of the health plan, along with the official cost estimate, is expected later this month.
The president's plan is sparking a wave of consolidations in the healthcare industry. Now, the latest will create by far the biggest U.S. commercial hospital company. Columbia Healthcare and HCA Hospital Corporation of America will merge in a stock swap valued at $5.7 billion. The new company will have revenues exceeding $10 billion. The move, announced this weekend, comes just 1 month after Columbia was created through another merger between Columbia Hospital Corporation and Galen Healthcare.
Another big merger reportedly imminent, this one in the banking industry. According to published reports, KeyCorp and Society Corp, 2 regional banks, are expected today to announce a merger that would create the United States' 10th largest banking company. The new company would have about 1,000 branch offices nationwide with combined assets totaling some $58 billion.
Now let's take a quick look at where the markets are right now. Stocks in Europe are having a mildly positive reaction to the events in Russia. Boris Yeltsin appears to have the upper hand. That's a plus for stocks in Europe. At the moment in London, the FT 100 share index is up 8 points. In Frankfurt, the DAX index is up 14 points. In Paris, the CAC 40 index is down, but only by a fraction. As for the dollar, not much of a safe haven today. It is, though, slightly higher against the European currencies. Gold and silver prices, they too are only slightly higher.
And that is Business Day for this Monday. I'm Deborah Marchini.
And I'm Stuart Varney in New York. CNN's live coverage of the developments in Russia continues.
This has been a presentation of CNN Business News.
Business Travelers Advisory is brought to you by Goodyear, #1 in tires.
Save right now. Buy 3 Goodyear tires at the regular price, get the 4th tire free. That's right. Buy any 3 of these Goodyear tires at the regular price and get the 4th free. 4 for 3 now. Hurry, savings end soon.
In the 80s, a lot of companies invested their pension funds in questionable real estate. Unfortunately, that's life. In the 80s, we invested most of our pension funds in investment-grade bonds. That's New York Life. New York Life, the company you keep.
Save right now. Buy 3 Goodyear tires at the regular price, get the 4th tire free. That's right. Buy any 3 of these Goodyear tires at the regular price and get the 4th free. 4 for 3 now. Hurry, savings end soon.
I'm Dave Hennon along with a look at your business traveler's advisory. Quiet weather is expected across most of the United States today. We do expect some scattered showers and thunderstorms through South Florida. High pressure dominates much of the west, but we are seeing some fog problems across California. We'll start in the Midwest as we take a look at possible delays today. Mostly clear skies will cover most of the Midwest, but some gusty winds could cause some delays in Chicago during peak hours. In Dallas, 20 to 45 minutes are being experienced right now, delays because of some low clouds and fog in that area. In the east, we do expect delays in Atlanta during peak traffic hours. In Jacksonville, visibility is reduced down to around a quarter-mile visibility and some dense fog, so expect delays in that area. In Miami, some thunderstorms, so some rerouting expected mainly during the afternoon hours. Expect delays in Newark, gusty winds, and delays during peak hours. In the west, Los Angeles, already hour delays this morning due to some dense fog at LAX. In San Francisco, 15-minute delays are being experienced because of some fog, and dense fog also in Seattle. Expect delays in that area as well. It's 6:57 in the Midwest, 7:58 in the east. The news continues in just a moment.
Cheryl Ladd on the new bottom-shaping sensation, ShapeMate.
ShapeMate's the quickest, easiest way I have ever found to tone and tighten and sculpt your bottom. First, you slip the ShapeMate under the door. Then you slip the cap over your ankle.
Every time you pull, you're strengthening your gluteus maximus muscles. The ShapeMate cables deliver just the right amount of progressive resistance.
Total body conditioning requires more than just aerobics. I recommend ShapeMate as an effective tool for rounding out your fitness program.
ShapeMate's great for arms, tummy, and waist, and you can take it anywhere.
Don't cover up, tighten up. With ShapeMate, it works.
ShapeMate comes with 2 cables, an upper body adapter, complete instructions, and a handy carrying bag, all for just $19.95. Send check or money order to this address or order by phone with your credit card and get this pocket nutrition guide absolutely free. Sorry, operators cannot accept COD or bill me orders. Call and order now.
Here he comes again. Ray Stevens is back.
That burns
with a brand new video. Ray Stevens Live.
Great, great, great. I want to see it again.
11 great songs, including Guitar Zan. Shriners Convention. Just #1.
Gotta see it.
I saw Elvis in a UFO.
Saw Elvis in a UFO.
Misty.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten of tea.
That musical funny man is loose again. This time live on stage for almost 1 full hour of new zany family entertainment. Here's how to order.
For rush delivery, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-257-1257 or send $19.98 plus $4.50 shipping to Ray Stevens Live, P.O. Box 2919, Atlanta, Georgia, or call 1-800-257-1257.
This is CNN.
Black smoke from an assault on Russia's White House. Day 14 of Russia's political crisis begins literally with a bang.
Oh. Did you see that? Tank has opened fire on the front of the White House. A T-72 tank has fired twice into the front of the White House. The tank is on the bridge at Kutuzovsky Prospect.
Good morning, I'm Bob Kane, and this is CNN's continuing coverage of the crisis in Moscow. Reuters news agency is quoting an aide to Russian President Boris Yeltsin. In fact, his chief military aide is saying there are an estimated 500 dead bodies inside the White House in Moscow, the Parliament building. There is at least a lull right now in the battle at the Parliament building. Some people have emerged carrying a white flag. There is talk of negotiations. Pavel Grachov, the defense minister, has arrived at the scene. He alighted from a limousine outside, and it appeared at the same time some people, perhaps casualties of the fighting, were being removed from the White House. CNN correspondent Claire Shipman is in Moscow and joins us now with the very latest. Claire?
Bob, we have heard those same reports that, in fact, not long ago, deputies emerged from the White House waving white flags, asking to negotiate with Pavel Grachov. Not long ago, we saw the defense minister in the crowds. He seemed to be talking to the troops. He was walking around the tanks and trying to break through the large crowds that have gathered at the end of the Kutuzovsky Prospect Bridge. That those crowds have been trying to force their way into the White House for most of the day. They've had some success. They've broken through some of the barricades. As you can see now, there are troops standing down there trying to keep those crowds back. At one point, it looked as though they might all sweep across the bridge, but they have been forced back. We've also had reports earlier that a deputy called our office from a cellular telephone, identified himself as a deputy, and said that the people inside wanted to negotiate. We, of course, were not able to confirm that phone call, but he identified himself as a deputy. Again, there has been no official attempt at any point by Mr. Khasbalatov or Mr. Rutskoy yet to ask for any surrender into the 8th hour of this crisis.
Scenes easily imaginable in much of the former Soviet Union, but certainly not in the middle of downtown Moscow. The attack on the Russian Parliament building began just after dawn. Boris Yeltsin true to his word when he promised to regain control of the city. By midday, the White House was completely surrounded by tanks and APCs.